all washers have a type of suspension system. The suspension system on a top load washer is different from the older style. Again, the older style with a mechanical timer, that type of suspension was literally that whole tub and basket sitting on kind of a metal frame. And there were some slides and stuff, so as it moved around, it would have kind of a buffer. Newer washing machine top loads, even I'd say anything made in the last 12, 13 years, they have basically in each corner of the washer, they have a metal rod. At the bottom of that metal rod, there's a spring, I'd say maybe 3 to 6 inches long. And so what happens with that, that's very important with how well the washer balances. And so it's almost like the shocks on a car. If your shocks are bad, you go over a bump, your car is going to go all over the place. The purpose of shocks, it's not really to make it comfortable, it's just to make it safe so the tires stay on the road. Well, with a washing machine, the shocks are going to absorb a lot of that movement when it's in a spin, and it's going to help stabilize it. Typically, if the symptoms you have whenever your suspension, rods, shocks, there's a bunch of different names for it, when those are bad, it won't finish cycles. As they start to go bad, you'll notice that more often you get an unbalanced error and you've got to go in there, readjust the close, start it, it'll run through. You'll notice that typically it gets worse and worse over time. 100% is the suspension. What's really cool about that, it's very easy to check if it's bad or not. So literally all you do, and again, we're talking about a top load washer, when the unit is empty, you literally just reach in there and give it a quick hard push down. And what it should look like, the whole unit should go down, up, and pretty much be solid. Again, suspension like on a car, keep the tire on the road nice and stiff. When they're bad, you'll, even if you, instead of going down and up, you'll kind of go down, up, and then down like that. Even just that extra little movement like that, it's bad. When it's really bad, it's like a bunny
All
rabbit. It's
over.
jumping all over the place. And in most cases, with changing the suspension rods, again, that's a really easy repair. It's inexpensive. Sometimes the suspension rods come as a set of 4. Sometimes they come individually. So if you are ordering them, you want to be careful and see how many are coming with it. And most of the time, all you've got to do is just pop the top and you can see where it goes. It's really easy. You don't even need a screwdriver a lot of times. Usually there's clips holding the top on that allow the whole thing to come up. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 screws on the back that allow you to pop the top. But if you could find a video that shows you how to do it, we're talking maybe 15 minutes to change the suspension. So
And that's something which, you'd imagine is otherwise quite complex. But basically, if you are noticing unbalanced errors that keep cropping up, or maybe it is just jumping around way too much,
yeah.
then yeah.
Yeah, I've actually got to change the ones on mine because it's starting to get kind of bad again. So now in a front load, the suspension's a little different. It does have a type of suspension, but so as a front load sits in there, the bulk of the weight is held by 2 really thick springs on the top side that connect to the top frame on the left and right side as you look at it. That holds the bulk of the weight. On the bottom of the front load, you have anywhere between 2 to 4. In this case, they're not so much suspension rods as they are shocks, and they almost look like the shocks on, like the if you open the kind of the back gate of like a SUV or something, and
Hmm.
those little shocks that are on yours. That's kind of what these
Yeah,
look
yeah.
like. They're really, these do provide a function in helping it to balance, but their main function is just to kind of catch a lot of that weight as it's spinning. You can have some pretty bad shocks in a front load washer, and if you have a balance issue, it's not usually because of that. I mean, in 16 years, I think I've had to replace those maybe 3 times. So typically what you have in a front load, which are not present in a top load, is on the front of the tub and basket assembly. There's these cinder blocks essentially that are just bolted to the front of the unit. There's typically 2, and it typically covers most of the front of the tub and basket assembly. What can happen sometimes if one of those breaks and falls, then it's going to be off balance because it's the way that the weight's distributed. Sometimes in a high spin, you'll hear a loud clacking or tapping. One of those weights could be loose. It's just as easy to tighten it. And honestly, a lot of the balancing in a front load is just done by the sensors. It's not as common for a front load to be unbalanced, really, in general.